Lindsay Tanner, in your new book you write that Australia and its people deserve much better than the carefully scripted play acting that now dominates our nation's politics. What do you mean?
We've got to a situation where spin, robotic scripting, all of the things that you've heard lots of complaints about over the past few years, I think have seriously distorted the picture of politics, even more distorting than usual, that is conveyed through the media. And what I've tried to do in this book, Sideshow, is to ask, why is this happening? And the answer is that politicians are reacting to how the media portrays them. They're getting more and more defensive because of gotcha journalism, because of journalists and media portraying politicians as being personalities, celebrities, doing silly things, and more they're drifting into a world of flim-flam and stunts and gimmicks, announceables and spin, both to protect themselves and also to stay in the media. So you get a toxic interaction between politicians and the media that is driving the Australian political process further and further away from issues, from the national interest, from serious political debate.
But that casts politicians in a pretty passive position.
Look, they're not entirely passive, that's true, and certainly responsibility for these problems is, I think, ultimately shared between politicians, media, and the people who vote for them and who watch and read and listen to the media, the whole community. So you're right, it's not something where politicians have no influence on the situation, but it's really important to note that without the media, politicians do not exist. The only reason a substantial proportion of Australia knows who I am is because of appearances on things like the 7:30 report. No matter how good I might be, no matter whether I'm the greatest politician who's ever existed, without the media, I'm no one. And therefore politicians have to play the media game to a large extent to get coverage, to get publicity, to contact the wider community. And when the rules of that game change, they change their behaviour. Just as footballers, when the rules change, they change their strategies. But
if politicians want the media to change, don't politicians need to lead from out in front instead of being reactive? That's what I mean by, isn't it saying politicians are very passive?
Look, it's good in theory, and it is possible that a big political dividend will come to somebody who decides to try and break out of these shackles, but there are endless examples of where distortion, trivialising, misrepresenting by the media sends signals to politicians about what they'll get punished for and what they'll get rewarded for. Politicians are like anybody else. They try to do things they'll get rewarded for and avoid doing things they'll get punished for. And to break out of that, it's very, very difficult. And we see, for example, what Channel 7 did to Tony Abbott in regard to those comments in Afghanistan. That should tell you why you have very defensive, very cautious politicians who guard every word, because the risk of being misrepresented at great political cost is ever present.
But it's hard to not trivialise or mock something like moving Australia forward, that the slogan that your party took to the last election.
Oh, true, and I agree with you. But you have to ask yourself, where did that slogan come from? And it came from a context where all of the rewards for politicians are in blanding things to a point where they are meaningless, in avoiding offending anybody and trying to look like they're doing something without actually seriously tackling problems.
Is that, sorry to interrupt, but is that actually delivering rewards? Because you look at the way the public currently views politicians and it doesn't look like that behaviour is delivering many rewards at all.
Well, I think it delivers short-term rewards. But what it means for the longer term, of course, is a different matter. And perhaps New South Wales is a good example of where eventually those strategies run out of steam and you get punished big time down the track. The trouble is that politics is a very short-term pursuit. And one of the great dilemmas for ministers is that the tough, hard reform strategy that might deliver rewards for the community in 10 years' time, but pain up front, is only going to produce political pain for the reformer, and somebody else will get whatever political benefits flow from the benefits of the reform. So all of the signals are the wrong way around, and it's difficult to know how to break out of that. So you've got this interaction between media that sensationalises, misrepresents, distorts, trivialises, always wants to put on a song and dance show and pretend it's serious political coverage, and politicians who are forced to respond to those pressures and to avoid being the victims of gotcha journalism and being exposed as making gaffes and all of these kinds of things, all of which have little relevance to the big issues facing the nation.
But are you generalising though? Because you can open the Australian or the Sydney Morning Herald or switch on the ABC any day of the week and you'll be finding a predominance of serious analysis of policy issues.
Well, First, yes, I am generalising, and there are exceptions. The ABC, largely because it isn't subject to commercial pressures, to some degree SBS, are nowhere near as bad, and thank God for the ABC and SBS, but they're not in the same position as companies that have got to make money. I would suggest to you that the Fairfax papers have gone down market in a big way. Some of the tabloids have gone even further down market. The Herald Sun used to be, in my view, the best tabloid newspaper in the world. The last few years, it has been dreadful. So I think the Australian is a mixed bag. So yes, there are pockets of seriousness, but also, for example, you'll get in the Australian a virtual full page